Hello everybody and welcome back to Dollar Tree Dinners. My name is Rebecca and today we're going to be trying some new recipes. I've kind of had this idea in the back of my mind for a little while now, and I know that there are some other people who have done something similar. I'm not sure on YouTube, but I've definitely seen it on TikTok, and that is trying some of the kind of more obscure manufacturer suggested recipes on the backs of food packages. What sparked this idea was there's a recipe on the back of this Pioneer country gravy, which I use a lot in my videos, for a broccoli cheese soup, which made from gravy mix is a little bit more obscure. So I picked out a handful of recipes, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert from different manufacturers' websites or the backs of their packages to try today. For breakfast, we have the Pillsbury Biscuits Everything Bagel Biscuit Bombs. For lunch, we're going to be making the aforementioned Pioneer Country Gravy Broccoli Cheese Soup. For dinner, we are going to be doing Knorr's Last Minute Lasagna. And then for dessert, we're going to be doing Ocean Spray's Outrageous Chocolate Cranberry Fudge Cake. So we have a lot of cooking to do. Let's go ahead and get started. So for the Pillsbury Everything Bagel Biscuit Bombs, we need 5 eggs, 1 tablespoon of butter, 3/4 of a cup of shredded cheddar cheese, about 3 ounces, 1 cup of fully cooked sausage crumbles, 1 can of flaky layered biscuits, 1 tablespoon of water, and some everything bagel seasoning. My sausage is not pre-cooked, so that's going to be the first step, is to fry these up. These are the skinless links. I get them at Dollar General. I would like to start branching out and doing other dollar store cooking content too. And of course, Dollar General also has that $5 off a $25 purchase on Saturdays. So hopefully I can give you guys some ideas on ways you can utilize that as well. I love sausage. It's probably my favorite breakfast meat in general. Not a big bacon fan. I do like bacon, but it's not my go-to for breakfast. Sausage is definitely my go-to. And I was kind of struggling to find a breakfast recipe to try because, especially in the US, I feel like all of our breakfasts are like sausage, egg and cheese, ham, egg and cheese, bacon, egg and cheese. It's all just different variations of that. And I was trying to find something a little bit more unique. So this is the best that I could find, at least for now. If you guys have any cool breakfast recipes that you want me to try, leave them in the comments down below because I'm always on the hunt for new breakfast food. Sausage is fried up. I'm going to drain off the fat because I actually have what I think, I'm going to try the recipe as is, but I actually have what I think is going to be a potential improvement to this recipe, but I need to drain the fat off of the sausage. Some of you might already know where this is going. Maybe you don't. Maybe it'll be a surprise. So then we have to crack and scramble 4 eggs. It doesn't call to add milk or anything to the eggs, so I'm just going to scramble them as is. And we're going to add the 1 tablespoon of butter into our skillet and let that melt. I did measure out the sausage, and that 7 ounces was exactly 1 cup, so perfect on that. And then we can mix this with our scrambled eggs. I'm going to set this aside to cool while we grate the cheese. Now you can definitely use pre-shredded cheese here. It says 3 ounces, so I'm going to just not quite half the block, but a little less than half the block. I am actually more of a mild cheddar lover than a sharp cheddar. I think sharp is a little bit too pungent for me sometimes. We are going to be using sharp cheddar for the broccoli cheese soup, as that's what the package calls for though. All right, so there is our cheese. We're going to set that aside too, because the eggs are still pretty hot and I don't want to mix the cheese in and have the cheese kind of melt prematurely. Prep our sheet pan by lining it with a sheet of parchment paper, or you can grease it with nonstick cooking spray. Now we get to prep our biscuits. Bear with me on this. At least this one didn't pop prematurely on me. There we go. It actually advises to separate the biscuits and then let them sit for 5 minutes. Which I'm still waiting for that sausage and egg mixture to cool, so I'm sure by the time that is ready, these will also be ready. I'm just trying to toss the egg and sausage mixture together and kind of break up any bigger chunks of egg or sausage. All right, now we can stir in our cheese. That looks excellent. The instructions say gently pull biscuit apart partially, leaving the bottom and lower sides intact, forming a deep pocket. Separation here. So we're just supposed to peel it apart, but I assume not all the way, leaving like a big hole here. And then we can add our cheese and sausage mixture. It says 1/4 cup. Press it inside to fit, and then crimp the edges to seal. All right, 1 down, 7 to go. So I'm on the 8th one here. I'm gonna show you the easiest way that I figured out to do this, which is just to kind of try to pull it apart. And once you find a seam like that, then I'm kind of forming it into a bowl. So I'm using my fingers to kind of pull it apart, but trying to keep most of the biscuit intact as much as I can. And trying to open it up all the way to the bottom, but keeping most of it relatively intact. So that forms a bowl in my hand. And then we're gonna grab our scoop of sausage and egg mixture, which I'm down to the last like little bit here, and pile that right in. It's gonna look super full. And then I press it down, just like filling a dumpling. Press it down and start to stretch the biscuit around the outside. Pressing all the way around. If you see any sticking out, press that in. But I'm trying to make sure that the biscuit is kind of evenly stuffed all around. And then you can reshape it into a little biscuit. I'm trying to kind of flatten it out too. I'm trying to make sure there's no like air pockets where things can kind of seep out, although there's nothing really liquidy in here. And I do still have a little bit of the egg and sausage filling left over, but trust me, that won't go to waste. I'll probably eat it while I wait for these to bake. That 5th egg is to make an egg wash for the top. So 1 egg mixed with a tablespoon of water. Give that a mix. And then we're gonna brush the top of each of our little biscuits with our egg wash mixture. And sprinkle each one with our everything bagel seasoning. These are then gonna get baked at 350. It says for 18 to 22 minutes. These recipes are meant to be very simple, and they're meant to sell a product, in this case, the layered biscuits. They're trying to keep things as easy as possible, but I do feel like this recipe might be missing a little something, and I think that this would be a really great base to make a stuffed biscuit and gravy. And that is where our sausage fat is gonna come into play, because while our biscuits are baking, I'm gonna make some country gravy. So starting off with the sausage fat, which is about 2 tablespoons, and I'm gonna let that melt over medium-high heat. And once it starts to sizzle, I'm gonna mix in 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Turn down the heat just a smidge here. My oven's a little finicky, so sometimes I have to turn down the heat to make sure that things don't get overcooked. So for me, sometimes for me, medium low is medium to medium high, just because of how finicky this double burner can be. All right, now we're gonna start adding in milk. I'm gonna add in about 2 cups of milk, but just a little bit at a time. Usually I do not measure this, I just kind of add by eye, but as I've mentioned before, when I'm making videos, and especially when I'm making kind of food educational content, it's important for me to measure it so I can make sure I give you accurate ideas on how to do things. But yeah, typically when I'm cooking, I just kind of pour the milk in and eyeball it. I'm gonna go in with another 2/3 of a cup, so we're at 1 1/3. And then once that's smooth, I'll go in with the last 2/3 of a cup. Now this mixture is just fat, flour, and milk. So right now it tastes like pretty much nothing. We have to add a pretty liberal amount of salt and pepper to this to make it taste like country gravy. Here's the thing about gravy. Taste it. If it's bland, add more salt and pepper. If it tastes too salty, add more milk. Same thing with pepper. If it tastes too peppery, just add a little bit more milk, a little bit more salt, but kind of adjust it to your own taste. You can't really go wrong here. Just add a little bit more at a time until you're happy with it. Just look at those. I am already very impressed with this recipe. I haven't even tried it yet, but it has all of my favorite things in it. Everything bagel seasoning, sausage, eggs, and cheese. I'm gonna let these cool down for a minute before we dig into one of them, but otherwise, I feel like those look fantastic, don't they? I could definitely see this being a very good meal prep option, but it is a lot of steps. So honestly speaking, if I was trying to make these for the freezer particularly, I would probably double the recipe to save myself some time. Because if you're going through the time to kind of stuff all these little biscuits, you might as well stuff 16 of them if you have the means to do so. Let's try it on its own, and then let's try it with the country gravy on top. These are honestly perfection. I would rate this a absolute, no questions asked, 10 out of 10. So I actually decided it was better to dunk them in the country gravy as opposed to just smothering it over the top. That way they're still kind of finger food, still kind of portable. As I mentioned, breakfast food is my absolute favorite. Breakfast for breakfast, breakfast for dinner. If you put sausage, egg, and cheese on it, I am happy. I might be making these every week now. So next up we have the Pioneer Country Gravy Broccoli Cheese Soup, and I have been wanting to try this recipe for 6 months, and that's not really an exaggeration. Legitimately, I don't know what's taken me so long. But anyways, for this we need the package of Pioneer Country Gravy, 10 ounces of frozen chopped broccoli thawed, 2 cups of sharp cheddar cheese shredded, 1 tablespoon of Parmesan cheese grated, and 1 tablespoon of minced onion. This is a 10.8 ounce bag of broccoli, so pretty much perfect, and it has been in my fridge overnight. I did spend a little bit extra to get the florets because I prefer the florets over stem pieces. We're gonna go through and chop that up. This is thawed but has not been steamed, so I haven't put it in the microwave or anything. It's just been in the fridge. Now, I love broccoli cheese soup, and I like the one specifically from Panera. And I have tried to recreate that soup at home so many times. And every recipe that I've tried has not, to me, tasted like Panera. I've tried probably a dozen in the past 10 years or so. So I continue to get my broccoli cheese soup at Panera, and I don't really have any anticipation that this is going to taste like Panera. But if it's good, then it's only a handful of ingredients, so that's why I'm so curious to try it. We also need to grate our cheese. This is a block of sharp cheddar, and since I need 2 cups, that's pretty much going to be the whole block. And the same cheese grater that I just used. I'm not even gonna bother with it because it's only been like a couple hours, so it'll be fine. So I'm gonna grate this whole block of cheddar. All right, so the cheddar, she's grated. Now, the onion. A lot of dollar stores don't sell whole onion, and it doesn't specify, it just says minced onion. So technically minced onion can mean either of these, or sometimes this seasoning goes by the term minced onion. It's essentially just onion that has been chopped and dried. And so if your dollar stores don't carry produce, then you could certainly use something like this. But I kind of have these onions I need to use up. I can probably use the rest of this in the last recipe that I'm going to be trying, or the dinner recipe that I'm going to be trying, although it would deviate slightly from the written recipe if I put some onion in it, but it's not going to make that big of a difference. There are no instructions for this recipe. As you can see, it is just combine all ingredients, blend well, simmer until thoroughly heated. So in this case, I do feel like as somebody who cooks fairly frequently, I should deviate ever so slightly. And I do think because of how the instructions are written, that they intend for you to use those dried minced onions and not fresh minced onion. So here's my judgment call that I'm going to be making is I'm going to be sauteing my onion first since I'm using fresh onion. I just have some vegetable oil here and I'm going to saute those for a few minutes until they're translucent. I am also at this point going to add in my broccoli. And now 2 cups of water with our packet of gravy mix. The water is cold, so the gravy mix should dissolve in the water easily. And I've got this on like medium heat right now. We'll let that thicken up just a smidge. I'm gonna lower the heat a bit and I'm gonna start adding in my cheeses. So tablespoon of Parmesan, and we can start going in with our cheddar. Understanding the basics of how to add cheese to this is important, I feel like. So 2 handfuls at a time and mix, and make sure that all the cheese is melted before the next addition. And I already anticipate that this is going to be very thick, so I do think we're going to have to add more water to it as the package indicates. All right, in goes the other half of our cheese. I'm debating between milk or water because it says either or. So since I use milk for breakfast, I feel like I should just go ahead and probably toss like a cup of milk into this because this is quite thick. So in goes 1 cup of milk. Let that kind of heat through and then we'll give our soup a taste. So as you can see, this recipe came together really super quickly, honestly, so I kind of hope it's delicious because this took me less than 20 minutes from start to finish to make. So this is an entirely blind taste test. I haven't tried it while I was cooking it at all. I don't know if it needs seasonings. I don't know if it's cheesy enough. It does look beautiful, I will say. It's a lovely consistency. The cheese isn't grainy or gritty at all. So hopefully this tastes, I have no optimism that it's going to taste like Panera, but hopefully it tastes good. Let's get myself a nice little broccoli florette there. I'm gonna have to file country gravy broccoli cheese soup under a list of things that should not work but do work. definitely this recipe was tried and tested before they put it on the package. It sounds very strange in theory, but it tastes pretty amazing. I probably could have cut back on the milk ever so slightly. I think that putting a cup in there was a bit over ambitious on my part. It probably could have been closer to like half a cup so that the cheese flavor was a little bit more rich. And it does need a bit of seasoning. At the very least, maybe a little bit of salt. But otherwise, I am genuinely impressed with this soup. And I did not expect to be. Because it's country gravy, every once in a while you get a little bit of that black pepperiness in there, which isn't bad. It just kind of just hit the back of my throat a bit. I'm gonna have to give this one like an 8 out of 10, I wanna say. We're gonna jump ahead slightly to dessert because the dessert needs time to chill in the fridge. So this is the Ocean Spray Cranberry Jelly Outrageous Chocolate Cranberry Fudge Cake. One thing I do wanna mention about this is that there are actually 2 recipes for this. The one that's on the can and then the one that's on the Ocean Spray website. And they are ever so slightly different from one another. The main difference is that this can calls for either the whole berry or the jellied cranberry, whereas the one on the website only calls for the whole berry cranberry jelly. The other thing is that the one on the website has a recipe for a frosting, whereas the one on the can does not. Today, I am going to be following the recipe that's on the can because someone might otherwise not know to look at the website. So to make this outrageous chocolate cranberry fudge cake, we need semi-sweet chocolate chips, butter or margarine, unsweetened chocolate, cranberry sauce, sugar, 2 eggs, vanilla, flour, and baking powder. I have removed the label to the cranberry jelly so that I can reference the recipe a little bit easier. Preheat oven to 325. Line an 8-inch round cake pan with aluminum foil. Coincidentally, the cake pans that are sold at Dollar Tree are 8-inch round cake pans. Coat foil with cooking spray. This is a lot of preventative steps for sticking, which definitely leads me to believe that the texture of this cake is kind of wet. Then dust pan with flour. Alright, it says we need 2/3 of a cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips. My 1/3 of a cup is in the dishwasher. So I did a little over half a cup, which should be about 2/3. Half a cup of butter, so the whole stick. Now it calls for unsweetened chocolate. I could not find any unsweetened chocolate at Dollar General, so I got dark chocolate, which has a very small amount of sugar in it. I mean, as compared to some other dark chocolates, it does have sugar in it. It's not ideal, but I couldn't find any unsweetened, so this was the closest thing I could get at Dollar General. And we need 1 ounce of it. This is a 3.5 ounce bar. So about 1/3 of this bar. I'm just gonna do that. All right, so microwave chocolate chips, butter, and unsweetened chocolate in a microwave safe bowl on high for 1 minute, then stir until smooth. I am most definitely not eating the rest of that bar of dark chocolate as I microwave this. And it does say we might need an extra 30 seconds in the microwave to help melt the chocolate the rest of the way. Let's see if we do need that. There's like 1 little lump of unmelted chocolate. Seems to be melting though. Chocolate melts with agitation, not necessarily just heat. So sometimes all you gotta do is stir it a little bit longer. It needs heat and agitation to melt completely. Add cranberry sauce and sugar. So, there's our cranberry jelly. Whole lump out of the can. I think I have to make another judgment call here since I wasn't able to get unsweetened chocolate. I feel like I should reduce the sugar slightly. It calls for half a cup. I'm gonna cut that back by a couple tablespoons. Just because we don't want it to be overly sweet. And I'm sure that there's a reason that they called for unsweetened chocolate. And we're supposed to mix that well, which I'm sure is gonna look lovely. I actually really like the idea of this being a cranberry chocolate cake. I've never had it before, but I'm intrigued. I do like those like little chocolate orange things that are kind of fruity and chocolatey, and I'm kind of hoping that this is like that but in cake form. I'm actually thinking about saving these and having like a little recipe book. I cut this one off of the cranberry sauce, and then I cut this one off of the gravy, and then I could put like little notes next to it, just kind of like breaking down what I did differently. But I think it'd be fun to start a recipe book like that and just start collecting these kind of strange recipes off packages. 2 eggs. Is that a shell? I can't tell. Hope that it wasn't a shell. All right, so 2 eggs, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1/4 cup of flour. So structurally, this almost seems more like a brownie than a cake with only a 1/4 cup of flour in it. Yeah, 1/4 cup of flour, okay? And 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And once again, mix well. The trouble that I'm having here is getting all of the cranberry jelly kind of broken down and one with the rest of the batter. So I almost feel like if you're gonna use cranberry jelly and not the whole cranberries, that it should be microwaved with the butter and the chocolate, so it kind of melts it a bit. I don't want to over mix this. It says mix well, but if I have a couple little bits of cranberry still in it, I guess that is okay. Pour this into our prepared pan. It says to bake this for 40 minutes. "40 minutes in and we did not pass the toothpick test at all. It says the toothpick inserted in the center should come out clean. That is not the case. I'm gonna give it 5, maybe 10 more minutes and see how that goes. About 5 more minutes, closer to 6 maybe. Let's check this again. This already looks more cooked than the last one did. Almost, but a lot better. I think 3 more minutes should about do it. Third and final, hopefully, toothpick test. Still a little, it's fine. I'm gonna call it good. I'm gonna take this out, and it says to let it cool in the pan on the counter for 30 minutes and then refrigerate it for an hour. If it's slightly underbaked, I take full responsibility for that. Just want to say that. Let's make some lasagna, shall we? Or a really, really, really simplified version of lasagna. This is the Knorr recipe for last minute lasagna. And I will say that I have already seen a review of this recipe and a way to potentially improve it. So I'm going to be going based on that small critique. And it is a very small one. You will need ground beef, pasta sauce, basil and oregano, or in my case, I'm just going to use Italian seasoning, mozzarella cheese, and Knorr Alfredo pasta. They thought it would be better if it had 2 bags of Knorr Alfredo pasta. But to prepare the pasta, we also need milk and butter or margarine. We are going to preheat our oven to 350. We need 2 kind of pots going here. One to prepare the Alfredo pasta and the other to prepare the meat sauce. Now the recipe does specify that for the Alfredo pasta that we are to reduce the water to 3/4 of a cup. And since I am doing 2 packages, that means I need 1.5 cups of water. But everything else is according to the package instructions. 1/2 cup of milk, so in this case 2 packages. We're going to do 1 cup. Oops. And 2 tablespoons of butter or margarine. In the meantime, we're going to make our meat sauce by browning up our pound of ground beef. And as I mentioned earlier, I have the rest of this onion from the broccoli soup, and I do want to put that to good use, so this is a good way to kind of use it up. So I apologize, technically 2 deviations here from the original recipe, but can't go wrong with adding a little bit of onion into the beef. And my beef is out of my freezer, so it's still ever so slightly frozen, but we're gonna chunk it up as best as we can. This is just about to come up to a boil, so I'm gonna add in both of my bags of Alfredo pasta. A little mix. And that's gonna boil for 7 minutes. Once our beef is browned, we're gonna remove some of the extra grease. The trick to remove the grease is to just use paper towels if you have them. That way you prevent it from going down your sink. And then you just throw the paper towel away. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Soaks up all of that fat. Next, we're going to add 1.5 cups of pasta sauce. I am using the Prego Italian sausage and garlic. It is one of my favorite jarred pasta sauces, and it's got meat in it. Just going to add some sausage flavor into our lasagna too. Every once in a while, stir the Alfredo pasta just to make sure that it's not sticking to the bottom as it boils. And then we can also go in with 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. This looks pretty good, so I'm going to turn it down to low and just let it kind of simmer while we wait for the pasta to be done so we can assemble our lasagna. The baking dish here, and we're going to start with half of the meat sauce in the bottom, along with about 1/2 cup of shredded mozzarella. Now, I would have probably preferred to shred this myself, but Dollar General, at least my Dollar General, interestingly enough, doesn't sell blocks of mozzarella, only pre-shredded mozzarella. Then we can go in with half of our Knorr Alfredo pasta. This thing is hot. Trying not to make a mess everywhere. The other half of our beef sauce. And the other half of our Alfredo pasta. Spread those out all across the top here. This looks pretty delicious, I'm not gonna lie. I love this idea. And then we're gonna finish it off with another handful of shredded mozzarella cheese. This gets baked at 350 for 20 minutes. And that is our last minute lasagna. I did put it under the broiler just for a couple seconds to brown up the cheese because otherwise it would look very, very boring. But I'm gonna let this sit for 5 minutes and then we're gonna dig in and try it. This looks and smells very good. I did already kind of cut some slices. Hopefully we can get out a nice slice and see what kind of layers we've got going on in here. And that is what she looks like. I'd say that looks pretty good for a kind of shortcut version of a lasagna. More of a rustic bechamel lasagna, at least. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. You guys will have to let me know what you think. Today has been such a fantastic day of trying these recipes. Not a single one of them has disappointed me so far. And that makes me extremely happy because especially I make videos specific to people on a budget, and when you're on a budget it can be really, really hard to try new recipes because if it doesn't work out then you've wasted the money, you've wasted the time, and those things are very valuable. So I'm glad that I could try them for you and come to you with an honest opinion on them, and so far I've been really impressed by everything. I am super excited about this pasta dish. That tastes like a lasagna. I'm so impressed because this came together a lot quicker than a traditional lasagna would, but this tastes almost identical to lasagnas that I have actually paid pretty good money for at Italian restaurants in the past. I cannot say enough good things about this recipe. This is, if the biscuit bombs were a 10 out of 10, this is like a 12 out of 10. For being a lasagna and tasting as real and authentic as it does, and how easy this was to put together, this is better than my $5 lazy lasagna. It's not $5, but this is better than my $5 lazy lasagna. So that's a win. This is fantastic. It's been such a good day so far. I really hope that the cake is not the part that goes wrong. All right, we're gonna invert that onto a cake pan from Dollar Tree. Cake plate, I should say. Okay. Moment of truth. Try to remove this aluminum foil. Okay. It's definitely very fudgy. I can definitely see that. Okay, we are trying not to mar it. So I'm trying to remove the aluminum foil as gently as possible. And I can see why the website version calls for a frosting. Now, I assume that the frosting is mostly just to kind of cover up because this is kind of an imperfect cake. But you know, we're not about perfection here. I have another idea on how you can cover this up without having to make a frosting. We're gonna bust out an old school cake hack here to make it look pretty without a frosting. Powdered sugar and a sifter. It's kind of hard to cut because it's so dense. Watch this be the best cake I've ever eaten. So far, everything has been spectacular. I can't imagine that this is gonna be bad. All right, got ourselves a slice cut. Super dense, very fudge brownie-like texture. Not very airy, but it is supposed to be a fudge cake, so that makes sense. Y'all honestly have no idea how excited I am for this cake because everything today has gone so well. This cake makes me wish I had friends or family that I could go to a holiday party with because I want to make this. I want to make this cake for my next get together because this is one of the best chocolate cakes I have ever had. I don't know how to explain it. It has the crisp of the outside edges of the brownie, but the inside is like fudge. Like, it's so moist and delicious, and it's not too sweet, but it is sweet. You get a little bit of that tangy cranberry flavor. I am 10 out of 10. I am so impressed with all of these recipes that I've tried today, but I am particularly impressed with this chocolate cake. The texture of this cake is what sets it over the top. I think frosting would ruin this cake, in my opinion, and why I think that the recipe on the can is better than the recipe on the website. This is a perfectly sweet and slightly tart cake. It does not need a frosting to make it sweeter, to make it more rich. It is perfectly rich on its own, but even more so to the point, if you were to frost this cake, you would lose that brownie edge-like texture, and that is the best part of this cake, is the dichotomy between the crispy and the soft, the crispy and the fudgy, the crispy and the moist. It doesn't need a frosting. So if you're gonna make this cake, make it per the can instructions and not per the website instructions. Do not make the frosting. It's like every bite of this is like the corner piece of a brownie. That's probably the best way I can put it. but with a tang. Like that cranberry, oh, it's addicting. It's so good. I had the most fun cooking today than I have probably had in a long time. This revitalized some energy in me, just trying some new recipes, and particularly trying recipes that I wouldn't have thought of, that I've never seen before, that I've never really heard of before, and they were all so fantastic. So if you are running out of ideas of what's for dinner, check out manufacturers' websites. Check your own pantry. You might be surprised what ideas you can find or come up with just by looking in your own pantry. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again soon.